Welcome to episode 407 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Ryan Silva. He just completed his first feature film, Let Me Be Frank. He's very candid, tells us exactly how he put this film together, and he did it all without very little in terms of resources and money. Just a lot of hustle. It's a really great template for getting a feature film done. So I hope it inspires a lot of people to go out there and make their movie. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 407. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. Teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So quick few words about what I've been working on. The big thing is I've just been finishing up with the SYS six-figure screenplay contest. We did our big announcement a couple of weeks ago where we announced the winners and the runners-up in both of our feature and our shorts categories. A lot of interesting scripts this year. The winners really did cover a wide array of different types of stories: drama, comedy, animation, thriller. One big lesson from this year, which I think, or one big lesson from last year, which I think also holds true this year again, there's a lot of producers looking for low budget horror and thrillers and action, especially action. I have a number of industry judges that only want to read low budget action scripts, and I never actually had any of the action scripts that entered, never actually got through my first round readers and got high enough scores to even get out to the industry judges. So if you have a low budget action movie, there's definitely people looking for this sort of stuff. Obviously the script has to be of a certain level. And as I said, the action scripts that came through this year, unfortunately my first round readers just didn't resonate with them enough to get high enough scores to then go to the industry judges. So again, there's definitely people looking for these scripts. If you have an idea that's low budget and in these genres, I would highly recommend that you write it up. The scripts, that seem to float to the top, and this again was last year too, is it always leans a little more towards the drama category. There's more dramas kind of rising up through these rankings as opposed to the genre fare. And I just don't have a lot of industry judges looking for straight up dramas. There's some, and I definitely got some exposure on the dramas that came through, but it's definitely a little bit of mismatch. There's more producers looking for one thing, and there's more writers writing one thing. I do believe that passion is a big part of the writing process, especially when it's an unpaid spec script, as these scripts are. So I'm not in any way suggesting that you go write something that you're not passionate about just because you think you can sell it, or just because some guy on a podcast thinks you can sell it. But hopefully as a writer, you have lots of ideas that you're passionate about, and perhaps you can look through those ideas and choose one that maybe is in a genre where there's a larger market than the market for dramas. Again, just a suggestion. There's definitely an imbalance, though, I would say, that I'm seeing in terms of what writers are writing and what people want to watch. And producers want scripts that have an audience. So now my job is to promote these top scripts, and really that's all the quarterfinalist, semifinalist scripts up. I'll be sending them out. I'll be highlighting them in my budget list at the end of the year, and really trying to get these scripts out to not just the industry pros, but really all my contacts in the industry. I'll be sending these out, and just hoping we can get some industry. So hopefully we'll get some options and potentially some sales here over the next year. So stay tuned for that. Definitely check out the website if you want to learn more about the winning and runner-up scripts. I have a short bio of each of the writers along with their log lines, and you can kind of just get a feel for what those scripts are all about if you just check out our website. Anyways, that's the main thing I've been working on over the last week. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing writer-director Ryan Silva. Here is the interview. Welcome, Ryan, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me, Ashley. Been a long time listening.
Well, perfect. Thank you. So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Yeah, so I'm from a relatively small town in Texas, West Texas, called Abilene. No filmmaking industry, no industry of any kind, really. Mostly a military town, and so about 2.5 hours away from any city. But I got into music and watching films kind of my high school year, and I moved out to Austin. There I discovered Richard Linklater, Robert Rodriguez, some of their cities, kind of film exports, and I still never thought I'd make anything, but I was definitely learning more about the indie film world. And then I came out to Los Angeles to pursue music, actually. And, the building I moved into and my neighbors, everyone I met seemed to be an actor or be involved in the film industry somehow. And I thought, if I'm ever going to write a screenplay, this would be the place to do it. And maybe, I could actually get it made here. So that's when it kind of became a reality.
Yeah, perfect. So let's talk about that in Texas. So you get out of high school, you go to Austin. How did you find the film industry there or the music industry? Were you able to get some roles as an actor? And what was sort of your goal? Was it just purely music at this point? But what were some of those steps that you took once you got to Austin?
Yeah, so it was completely music. And I had a little luck music-wise. And one of the reasons I moved out to LA is I was getting some what they call blog placements and a little bit of attention from like local Austin media, whether it was radios, and then I was getting some nationally as well, like Complex Magazine was one. And I thought, if I moved to LA rather than emailing with these, LA industry people, I can just say, hey, let's grab lunch. And I was very wrong about that. Turns out they're still busy when you right down the street. But music was the main goal. My girlfriend actually, who acts in this movie, Let Me Be Frank, she was acting in in Austin, and she was in Sin City 2. She was one of the I want to say Old Town Girls, but I don't know if that's right. But she was just kind of an featured extra, but she would tell me about that experience, and then she auditioned for Richard Linklater's Boyhood and was in, the writing room with him and ended up being one of the last people cut from that role. And so she was kind of experiencing a lot of this, and I was realizing this world was, a little closer than I realized. Mm-hmm. And it was still very early on, but I was just falling in love with, the Before trilogy and like Waking Life, and I was really interested in just like, you can make a movie without explosions, mm-hmm. and just people talking. And so that was probably the birth of my interest.
Yeah. So let's talk about your move to LA. I know there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are not in LA, perhaps maybe thinking of moving here. Maybe you can give a couple of tips. Did you save a bunch of money? Do you know some people here? Where did you get an apartment? Did you have a job lined up? Just go through some of those things. Kind of how was that landing in Los Angeles, and what tips, what lessons have you learned?
Yeah, completely. So I had about 2,500 saved. My girlfriend also had 2,500. We moved together. So 5,000 was kind of not a lot, and that's all I had saved my entire life. So It wasn't a lot, but that was enough to pay that first deposit. We didn't know many areas. We kind of Airbnb'd and all these different, whether it was Silver Lake and then North Hollywood, Burbank, to just try to get an idea of the neighborhood. We found out we liked West Hollywood. It was central to all these areas, and again in the movie, it's kind of based on that story as well. That's the area we moved in, and first thing we did was this job called Instacart, which is grocery delivery, and you can kind of pick your own hours. And we were delivering groceries for people, and making a living that way. But we didn't know anybody, we didn't have any jobs lined up, and we did that for a few years before I wrote the screenplay, and then decided, okay, I need to get into the real industry somehow. And I just applied for a bunch of internships and a bunch of like assistant gigs. And I ended up getting a job at a talent management company, which they manage actors and get them auditions and such. And so that was kind of my first taste into it. My idea was that I would meet someone who would help me make this script. And, kind of my same experience with music. That's not the case. I'm not Nicolas Cage. You can't sell a movie, unless it's maybe a big premise, but my low concept people talking in an apartment just wasn't really gonna.
Yeah, yeah. So just quickly, how did you get that job at the talent agency? I know that's a great way for people to kind of get their feet wet in the entertainment, is those sort of entry level jobs. Maybe give us a couple tips. How did you specifically get it? Did you meet a friend eventually that gave you a recommendation? Did you just apply online?
It was, so I remember the website's entertainmentcareers.net. And I cannot remember how I found out, about that. Maybe I was just looking for all types of jobs, and I maybe it was Reddit or something. But entertainmentcareers.net, and I applied to a few, and I did, in the meantime, I did some PA work. I found those gigs on like Mandy.com. But I was just trying to meet people, and ultimately I did at this talent management company, and they didn't necessarily help me make the movie, but they helped me realize that no one was going to help me make the movie, which was just as valuable. I was working with actors, but they also functioned as a production company, a small one. They'd only kind of produced a couple documentaries, but scripts would come in. So I did script coverage, and it became clear that nobody. It was super sad to me as someone who likes screenwriting. They don't read the scripts. They send it to me. They just hired me off the street. They're like, I got a meeting in 5 minutes with this producer. Tell me what to say. And it was me, and the producer, some of the times were some pretty quality producers. So it kind of, I don't know what the word is, but I kind of got sour on the idea of the whole industry. And maybe it was just my short experience.
Yeah. I think some of it is just the demystification of the whole process. Is you get a look at these people, and I'm similar to you. I grew up in sort of a small town. It was didn't bump into any entertainment people. So I think for me, that was a big part of it. Just the demystification. These people are just people like us at the end of the day.
And I will say it's a little bit of adjacent, but working in the talent management company, I was seeing like Breakdown Express. I was seeing my official job was, and what I spent the most time doing was looking at these casting breakdowns. So, for instance, Ashley actually saw your breakdown sent to Breakdown Express, and for your last movie, I believe the
Rideshare Killer, sure. Yeah, the Rideshare.
Yeah, Rideshare Killer. And so I submitted our talent agency's actors on that, and it was so cool seeing your name pop up. And again, I felt like all of a sudden, it wasn't the job I was looking for, but I felt like I had some sort of an agency, some sort of power in the industry just coming off the street, and it did demystify it. And,
so take a step back, as you're in your hometown, Abilene, Texas, getting ready to get out of high school. What do you think attracted you to the entertainment industry? Did you have creative parents? Did you have creative friends? Just, was there something that, sort of sparked your interest in, just like philosophically, why are you interested in pursuing this?
It's a good question, and you ask it on all these all these podcasts, and I wish I would have prepared for it. But my mom was not in the industry. We grew up or I did. I was a single child. It was just me and my mom. Single mother. We grew up in a trailer park. We didn't have a lot of money, and so she was in the entertainment industry. She worked at a dollar store, and so for me, I think the thing that attracts me most, and it's the same thing I did with music, is I just like to tell stories. And I think it's because being around people who maybe aren't as valued to America at large or society at large, I just always empathize with them, and I thought they had a story. I thought they were just as valuable as everybody else, and I kind of, just to survive myself, I had to think that I was as valuable as everyone else. So I wanted to tell. Through music, I wanted to tell my story, and I think what I like about film is I'm still learning, and again, I've only written a few scripts, telling other people's story who maybe are on the margins or not as represented.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of your first credits. I noticed on IMDb, you wrote your first writing credit is a short called Brit Follows. How did that come up? Just walk us through. You're new to LA. It doesn't sound like you knew a lot of people. So how did you start to make some of these inroads? You got, I think you have an acting credit on a short, and then, as I said, this writing credit before you got to your feature.
Yeah, so we've tried to get that deleted from IMDb, countless times. Any tips, and any writers out there, you can't. IMDb will not let you delete anything. So that was actually, it was a 24-hour film challenge. I don't know if some of you probably heard of these. Yeah, and I'd written a screenplay, and I was just starting to kind of entertain the idea of making the script myself. And so it was actually, again, my girlfriend Laura, who was an actress, and let me be frank, she was like, let's try this 24-hour or 48-hour film challenge, and we'll see if we can shoot a movie on an iPhone, because that was initially our first idea. Mm-hmm. And so we did it. We did Brit Follows. We thought it was good, and it was a great experience, editing and putting sound over in the end. We didn't win, but it was important, because we knew, all right, we're not going to shoot this movie on an iPhone. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was a music video. I think you may be referring to Plato the Third, my artist name. And then the other credits on there, the movie "Always Be My Maybe" on Netflix. They licensed one of my songs to be in that, and so it was funny. Once I kind of gave up on the music thing and got this film industry job, that's when Netflix called all of a sudden, and they were saying, "Hey, we'd like to use one of your songs." And it was like, and they hit me up on Facebook, just in my messages, and apparently that never happens.
Yeah,
what I was told.
Never heard of that.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have gave up on music, whatever. But
So let's talk about your feature film, Let Me Be Frank. Maybe to start out, just give us a quick pitch or logline. What is this feature all about?
Yeah, so a young rapper moves to Los Angeles with dreams of being, the next big thing. And he finds an unlikely friend in his apartment manager who had, similar dreams 20 years prior. Came to the city for the same reasons 20 years prior. And we find out in the movie that, he was an aspiring actor. So it was just kind of like two creatives. People get drawn to LA all the time. So no, it's a cliche thing, but I kind of wanted to just kind of juxtapose the young, naive, starry-eyed couple. It's a couple, a young rapper and a young actress. And then juxtapose that with kind of someone whose dreams hasn't worked out, who's gotten older and maybe is a little bit more curmudgeon-y and, bitter.
Yeah. That's interesting you say that, because when I first got to LA, I ran into it was a guy, he didn't live in my apartment. He lived in the next door apartment, and he was sort of, I was the young kid and he was 20 years ahead of me, and he was exactly that. He was a real bitter actor, real nice guy though. We had a lot of really interesting conversations, but I'll be curious to check out.
Movie.
Yeah, exactly. I'll be curious to check out your film. So, talk about a little bit, like, what was your goal with this film? Just again, creatively, financially, career-wise, going into this movie, what were the goals and what was sort of the idea behind it?
And it kept shifting, as you know. At first, it was write one page a day, and so and just write my first screenplay, and then I did that. I was like, okay. I knew I wrote it contained, and it was something that was makeable, and I was like, maybe I can get in. I submitted it to like screenwriting contests and Sundance labs, and I really wanted to. My main thing was I want to be a screenwriter. I didn't really have intentions of directing it. I like writing. That's the reason I tried. So my favorite thing about music is writing the songs. I don't necessarily care about performing or recording. I just like the writing, and so I want to do that. But then nobody would read my script, and I wasn't winning the contest, and I still had the script just sitting around, and it was hard for me to just have it sitting around. And so then the goal became, all right, let's see what I can do. And so I gave my script to anyone who would read it. Happened to be my neighbor whose kids I was a nanny for at the time, every day after school. And he read it, and then he told me he was a Emmy-nominated editor, for reality TV. It was a daytime Emmy, but there was no one like that back in Abilene, So I was really impressed, and he read it like 2 months after I gave it to him, and he told me to come over, and I thought he was just gonna say, hey, keep trying, kid, it's your first one, and he said, hey, you need to make this movie. I'm not gonna let you leave this house so you make this movie. I was like, well, I haven't even thought about doing that. I don't know anything about filmmaking. And then he gave me Robert Rodriguez's book, A Rebel Without a Crew. And he said, read this and then, make the movie. So I read that and I was like, wow, he had to shoot on film. We can just use these, we have all these advanced technology at our disposal. 30 years later, maybe I can. And so then I was able. The one thing I got from my job is, my boss had a camera, not a very nice one, but it was a Black Magic. Uh, uh, it wasn't even the Pocket Cinema one. It was the older kind of clunky one, and we got that. And the next thing I knew, I was behind the camera just trying to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, we just kept taking it one step further. Maybe we can make it nicer. We had some film students from LMU come and help us, a DP, who was extremely talented, and they had the knowledge, and I just knew the story. And so my job as director was just keep everything true to the story. And so the goal ended up becoming, all right, all the way from write one page a day to can we release this and can we finish this? And obviously we submitted to film festivals, didn't get in, but we got on Amazon Prime, and to me that's the end of the story, and I way more than I could have bargained for.
Yeah. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit. And specifically, we can talk about this script, but even just sort of in general. Where do you typically write? When do you typically write? Do you have a home office? Do you go to Starbucks? You need the ambient noise? You write in the middle of the night? You write first thing in the morning? What does your sort of writing schedule look like?
So for this one, again, this was my first screenplay. I have written since, but this one, I went to the library here in Los Angeles. It's the Writers Guild of America library, and just to be surrounded by the screenplays and the scripts, so that anytime that I got hung up, I could just refer to, this Richard Linklater screenplay. All right, what did he do at kind of Act 2 or whatever? And they had a lot of them at their disposal, and I would go there from about 12 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, and it took me. My goal was one page a day, and I was like, okay, I can finish the screenplay in about 3 months or so. It took me 6 months. Most of the time, just sitting there staring at the page. I would come home and I'd tell my girlfriend, say, how'd it go? I was like, I didn't write anything today, But that felt like part of the process as much as writing 3 pages a day. So that was my first one. After that, I got some confidence, and now I feel I kind of write at home. In my office, I've written a couple since, and just I'm a little bit more confident to kind of do it sporadically.
Yeah. So how do you take screenplay structure? There's sort of the Blake Snyder, Sid Field, a very clear template. There's people that I think are a little more intuitive on the structure. Where do you fall in that sort of camp as far as when you're laying it out and doing your outline?
Yeah, I tried those books. I tried the Save the Cat and a lot of these philosophies. The hero's journey, that sort of thing. I do really like the hero's journey as a philosophy, but and maybe you'll notice when you watch the movie, I think there's 3 acts, but it's not a technically structured movie. It's very much a dialogue movie. Like My Dinner with Andre was one of my inspirations on this, which is where's the structure there? It's kind of through conversation. So. Kind of intuitive. 3 acts is, I do kind of think of it in 3 acts, and I guess, use the hero's journey. My small understanding of that. That book was huge, so I just kind of took the main graphic and attached myself to that.
Sure. And how long do you spend in final draft writing? How long did you spend actually doing your outline?
So for this movie, let me be frank, I didn't do an outline, and maybe that's why I was half a page a day, because I wasn't prepared. The second script I wrote was based on a book, and I did have an outline, and I spent probably just a week or 2 on the outline, and then just wrote a pilot based off that. And that took me a weekend, which was great. I don't expect that to happen ever again. And then I wrote a 5-page outline in 1 day for my next script after, and I still haven't finished with that one. So I think I'm doing outlines now is my point. I think they're helpful.
Gotcha. So talk about then. So you had a draft. It sounds like it took you 6 months. You had a draft of this script. What were the next steps? Did you go through some lengthy development steps? Were you pretty much ready? It sounds like you gave it to this editor for some potential notes. Were you getting notes from friends, from your girlfriend? Talk about the development process, and then how that ultimately got out of the development process and started being in the pre-production.
I think there was... there ended up being quite a few revisions. My editor, or the editor, and who ended up becoming a producer, he did have a few notes. I had another one of the other experiences I had early on here is I actually met this guy. I'll say his name, Jim Koski, who I just saw again. My girlfriend, who was an aspiring actress, she found his casting breakdown on Backstage, and he needed extras. So one day I showed up to his production, and he was kind of doing the Robert Rodriguez thing where he was holding the camera himself, controlling the sound, had like the boom, and he was just also doing this passion project. He had gone to school at AFI, so he had a little more experience, but seeing him, try to put a movie together, something he always wanted to do, but now he was kind of financially secure to do it. He was in his 40s now. I was like, okay, maybe this is something I could do. So anyways, I sent it to him because he was one of my inspirations that I could possibly make it. And he had some notes, and things just getting tighter and tighter. And, the story was actually based on my apartment manager. So he was the one where the notes were the toughest because he was like, this is my life, to some degree. And I had him saying some things that maybe he wouldn't necessarily say, but I wanted to make the character more extreme. Mm-hmm. And so I did learn about trying to, which notes to try and take in and which notes might not necessarily be best for the story, even if they're more accurate or more true or something.
Yeah. So, okay. So then you have a draft that you like. And now just tell us, how did you take this? You had a screenplay, and how did you turn it into an actual movie? How did you get some money, get people together, get a camera? Just walk us through that process. And I think this is really important for people to hear, because you're like a lot of people that are really coming at it more of the writing angle and don't have a lot of experience in production or running a camera or grip and electrician stuff. So talk us through this. How did you go through this process?
Yeah, and I'll say this again, when I wrote the script, I did the contest. I was listening to selling your screenplay, every episode. Mm-hmm. My goal was give this to somebody else. I don't want anything to do with this, because I want it to be as good as it could be. And my thought was, if I do it, it's not going to be. And I thought the story deserved better. And so when I didn't get into any of those contests, when I listened to some of the stories from selling your screenplay, and I queried literary managers and heard nothing back, I was like, I don't think I can sell this. So we made it for about $5,000, and it was amazing. Things just started coming in. So the first thing was the camera, getting it from my boss. Just so happened he had one, and we ended up not using that one. But as soon as I got the camera, and we said, okay, let's try and film. And it wasn't a real crew. It was a skeleton crew. It was me holding the camera. It was the editor holding the boom. And then I went on and found some actors I just needed one actor to play Reggie, and then the other producer was my apartment manager, who essentially played himself, and we shot it in his apartment. And so it's just about being as resourceful as possible. Mm-hmm. I used people I know who happen to be in the film industry, and we used their apartments, their locations. So that's how it started. And then slowly, people found out. Like, I went back to the job and said, "Hey, boss, thank you for letting me use the camera. It went okay." And then he's like, "Hey," and he gave me $1,000. He said, "Hey, knock yourself out if you need this." And that was our first financing, I guess. And it wasn't a lot, but it ended up being 20% of the budget. And then, my girlfriend's father heard we were doing it, because she told, and she was helping too. We didn't shoot her scene yet, but she was, part of the crew on that first day. And her father found out and gave, here's $500. And then my editor, who was holding the boom, once he edited the footage and realized that camera wasn't good enough, he talked to his friend about this weekend he had shooting this film. And his friend was like, "Well, you can use my pocket cinema camera. I haven't been using it for months." Mm-hmm. And it was the newer version of the camera we were using. So all of a sudden, now we had a new camera. We had a little bit of money, and we had a new intern at that job I had, who was from this film school. And he asked me what I did last weekend. And I told him, and he's like, "Hey, it's summertime. My whole crew has nothing to do. We'd love to volunteer, if you can pay for, gas and food. And, we'd just love to get a credit and copy for the summer." And I was like, "Yeah, we have money for gas and food because we just got this $1,500. And so these things, that's how it all started. And the next time we shot, it was for real. And we had this kind of production schedule. We did 4 days in a row. We did another 4 days. And that money went out quick for gas and copy. And then we rented a little bit of equipment here from Sammy's Camera. Luckily, the DP and my editor had a little bit more experience, so they knew what to rent. Mm-hmm. And those 8 days, we knocked out a good amount of the film. Mostly it was interiors inside my apartment room, inside uh, my apartment manager's room, walking around the neighborhood, no permit,
Hmm.
no insurance, trying to be as discreet as possible. And then we kind of had a long break because then we was like, all right, well, our next scene is in a restaurant. How are we going to do that? We also got to shoot this in a barbershop. How are we going to do that? And a church. And so we kind of took a production break, and then it started being a thing where, all right, we might just have to shoot one Saturday in 2 weeks because that's when the barbershop's available. And that was my actual barber as well. And then the restaurant, we just made my rooftop at work look like a restaurant. And my apartment manager went to his church and asked the priest, if he would be okay. He said, yeah, just pay your tithes or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
I'm not Catholic. Yeah. And so, anyways, and it ended up we could get these things, and luckily they didn't ask for insurance because they were friends we knew. And so, long story short, don't want to go too much into it.
Hmm.
And I guess the part is the other. I did have to end up becoming the actor because we realized, we don't have any money to pay anybody, and if we are going to have to shoot, 3 months after initial, production. We can't, it's just not right to ask somebody to be available for free at
Yeah.
that, that sort of thing. Like, hey, we need you. And so I was the only person who was definitely going to be there because I was going to direct the thing.
Hmm.
So.
Gotcha. Okay, so then you got this film shot. It sounds like the bottom line is hustle is contagious. You just talked it up and got a bunch of people just excited about it. But so then once you're done your film, what are the next steps? Did you submit to some distributors? Sounds like you went to a couple festivals, and then ultimately, how did you get it on Amazon Prime? What is the path to that?
So yeah, it was the same as the screenplay experience, just striking out. We submitted to the festivals, and I kind of regret this now. I submitted to South by, Sundance, Tribeca, and I think similar to those screenwriting contests, some of those lower level festivals are sort of, they take your money and maybe you don't get as much from it. But I do think there were some middle ones that we could have benefited from submitting from. But once we didn't hear back from Sundance, Tribeca, and so forth, then I did look up a list of distributors, and I started seeing deals. Not that they were offered to me, but I started seeing like experiences, reading about them on Reddit of the sort of deals people offer, and I was like, oh, they're going to own our film for this long, and we only get a percentage. Some people were saying I still haven't been paid from working with this one company, and so I just started thinking, what other options are there? And I was inspired by another filmmaker from Austin, Jim Cummings. He made this movie Thunder Road and the beta test, and I think he won like the jury prize at South by Southwest with Thunder Road. But then he didn't even sell his film, even though obviously he had buyers because he won. And he put it out himself. And there's this case study I think on Sundance.com about how he did it and how he made more money doing that. So I wasn't able to hit it off
Hmm.
like he did, but I did find this company called Film Hub, which isn't your technical or your traditional distributor, but they take 20%. There's no upfront fee, and you can remove your film at any time from their services. So they don't own anything, but they do give you access to, I think it's like at this point, maybe over 60 channels or something. And they're not all high-end channels, and sometimes they're genre-specific, like horror are going to get different channels than our film did. But the main one that they have access to is Amazon Prime. And as long as you're not making a short film and your film is not a documentary, you have a pretty high chance of getting on Amazon Prime. And it was important to me. Every film will get on Amazon Prime to rent or buy, but I wanted ours to be streamable for free just so more people could see it, because I
Hmm.
thought that was what was going to help all the actors get their work out,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
editor, the screenwriter, the director. And so we got on about 6 weeks after submitting to them. And they also have access to Tubi, which fingers crossed we get on. Apparently, Tubi pays out more money because they have commercial advertising in between. The deal at Amazon is 5 cents per hour, and
Hmm.
that's no matter where your film gets on Amazon. And then Tubi takes 20% of that, so 1 cent. So you're getting 4 cents per hour. So not a way, your goal is to make money. You're not going to get it from Amazon Prime. But, we didn't have a big investment into this movie to begin with. So we're fine. The goal was never to make money. And at the end of the day, we lost a couple $1,000.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Film Hub as well. We just signed with Rideshare Killer with a company called Indie Rights, and I think they're very similar. It's the same deal. They take 20%. There's no upfront fees, and they don't charge you a bunch of like marketing costs and these sorts of other things, which are you got to watch out for as a independent filmmaker.
I was looking at that one too, and I think one of the perks of theirs, your trailer pops up, in their YouTube channel. They already have this community.
Yeah.
So that was the other one I was deciding between.
So yeah, perfect. So what's next for you? What are you working on now?
I forgot this other script I wrote. I wrote a script that like a big premise one, and I'm gonna try this whole selling your screenplay thing again. Hopefully, I can maybe get a literary manager this time now that I have a movie, in my back pocket. And then, the script I'm kind of in the middle of is another low budget indie one. I don't think I could make it for $5,000 because I would want to go back home to Texas. It's kind of about the trailer parks I grew up in, and so I think I need a little bit more money for that one. But yeah, we'll see. I'd love to sell my my. Is that what that's called? No, high concept. There we go.
Yeah, big budget, high
premise.
Concept.
Yeah. I'd like to sell my high concept one. And then ultimately, I'd like to make my this kind of low budget indie one again. I have no interest in directing the high concept one, but I would like to direct the low budget one. And Sundance has this program. I think it's just for sophomore films.
Oh, gotcha.
So even though I got burned the first time, I'm still naive enough to think that it's worth trying again. So we'll see.
Yeah. I like to wrap up these interviews just by asking the guest if there's anything that they've seen lately that they thought would be really useful for screenwriters to check out. Netflix, Hulu, HBO. Is there anything recently you've seen that you thought was really excellent?
It's not really a deep cut or anything, but I just got done watching Scenes from a Marriage, the new HBO.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, it's just a lot of, I'm into a lot of talking and a little, the tension between just a few characters and that sort of relationship. And I really enjoy it. The acting was phenomenal, but, just telling the story of that relationship and it spans a good amount of years, but there's just 5 1-hour episodes. That did it for me. So I really enjoyed that.
Gotcha. So it sounds like Let Me Be Frank is on Amazon right now. I assume iTunes, all of these sorts of places, people could potentially check it out.
So iTunes, I don't believe it is yet.
Okay.
And maybe that's one of the perks of indie film rights. Maybe I messed up, but I know it's on Vimeo on demand on the Vimeo on the
Gotcha.
Film Hub page for 99 cents. It's on. I think it's just Amazon Prime right now. Our film hasn't been picked up by those other channels I was hoping for. And I don't know how long it'll be on Amazon Prime either. I'll have to come back and tell you if you want. I don't know if he has to perform a certain way to stay up, but it's on there for now. So.
Perfect. And what's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, a blog, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up for the show notes.
Yeah. Typically, I just use Instagram the most. It's still my music artist name, at Plato the Third. Plato like the philosopher and spelled out the third. So yeah, I mostly post about music stuff these days, but also we also have at Let Me Be Frank Film, where I'm kind of telling the story.
Okay.
How this movie all got made, in a little bit more detail, and how we got each actor and their story. So if you want to follow that, at Plato the Third and at Let Me Be Frank Film on Instagram.
Perfect. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me today. Very candid interview. I think this is very inspiring.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, it's kind of surreal to be on selling your screenplay. I didn't even sell a screenplay, so maybe
there you go. You made a movie. That's the ultimate goal, is making a movie. So you're good, man. So, well, congratulations getting it done, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Next time you get your next film done.
Hey, you got it. Yeah, I'll send you an email.
Perfect, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay Database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. There have been a number of success stories come out of the service. You can find out about all the SYS Select successes by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. Also on SYS podcast episode 222, I talked with Steve Deering, who was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. These services include the newsletter. This monthly newsletter goes out to a list of over 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also provide screenwriting leads. We have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads services, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, features, TV, and web series pilots, all types of projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. We also have a number of screenwriting classes that are recorded and available in the SYS Select forum. These are all the classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to those whenever you want once you join. The classes cover every part of writing your screenplay, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that is sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Spencer King, who just did a cool feature thriller called Time Now. We talked through that film as well as his first feature film, a film called Black Petunia, and how he was able to get that one produced, and then how that ultimately led to his new feature Time Now. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.